I'll call the Committee on Transportation Infrastructure to order. Pursuant to Committee Rule 6F and House Rule 11, Clause 2HF, the chairman may postpone further proceedings today on any question of approving any measure or matter or adopting an amendment on which a recorded vote of the yeas and nays is ordered. I'd ask unanimous consent that the chairman be authorized to declare recess at any time during today's meeting. Without objection, that is so ordered. All bill and amendment texts have been distributed electronically, and paper copies are also available here in the hearing room. As a reminder, the committee may use an electronic voting system for any requested votes. Today, the committee is considering H.R. 7376, the Local Water Protection Act, an amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 7342, the Made in America Jobs Act of 2026, an amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 7388, the Smart Space Act of 2026, and House Concurrent Resolution 73, authorizing use of capital grounds for the National Peace Officer Memorial Service and the National Honor Guard and Pipe Band Exhibition. Finally, I'd ask unanimous consent for the committee to use an amendment roster for any items under consideration by the committee. Without objection, that is so ordered. Our first item for consideration is H.R. 7376, the Local Waters Protection Act. I'd ask unanimous consent to discharge the Subcommittee on Water Resources and Environment from further consideration of H.R. 7376. Without objection, that is so ordered. I now call up the bill for consideration. Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I recognize myself for 5 minutes. The Local Waters Protection Act is a 5-year reauthorization of the EPA's Section 319 Non-Point Source Management Program. This program allows states, territories, and tribes to receive grant money to implement their non-point source programs required under the Clean Water Act. Collectively, this work has restored over 6,000 miles of stream and over 164,000 acres of lakes since 2005, when the tracking began. My home state benefits from this program as it supports Missouri's non-point source management program, allowing for locally led efforts to restore rivers and lakes. And this funding helps to achieve water quality improvements, and I commend my colleagues on both sides of the aisle for all their hard work on this bill, and I'd urge support. And now recognize Rick for his statement.
Thanks, Chair. I support H.R. 7376, the Local Water Protection Act legislation that Representative Skolted and Mast introduced. This bipartisan bill will reauthorize the U.S. EPA, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's non-point source management grants program under Section 319 of the Clean Water Act. Non-point sources of water pollution come from many sources, including runoff from farms, managed forests, and urban areas. This runoff can carry pollutants such as fertilizers and sediments from fields, toxins from abandoned mines, and oils and heavy metals from roads. Many states, including my own state of Washington, are plagued with the impacts of non-point sources such as impaired water bodies and harmful algal blooms. EPA's Section 319 program provides funding to states to develop and implement their own programs for managing non-point sources of water pollution. These state-run programs can provide technical and financial assistance, education, training, technology transfer, and more to reduce non-point water pollution. I support this program and this bill and urge my colleagues to do the same. And with that, I yield back.
Representative Skolted.
Thank you, Chair Graves and Ranking Member Larson, for considering the bipartisan Local Water Protection Act and including it in today's markup. I'd also like to thank Representative Mast, someone who knows the importance of this issue to West Michigan as well, a one-time West Michigander, for working with me on this vital bill. I'm so grateful for your partnership. H.R. 7376 will reauthorize a critical EPA program that ensures states have the resources necessary to develop and implement non-point source water pollution programs. As already stated, this program has helped thousands of miles of rivers, streams, and lakes across the country. It's proven, common sense. It's a program that helps communities tackle water contaminated by diffuse sources such as agricultural runoff, excess sediment from natural erosion and construction sites, and even salt from road de-icing, which we have an abundance of in Michigan right now. Non-point source pollution is highly problematic for several reasons. It allows harmful algal blooms to thrive, hinders fish repopulation, increases flooding risk, enables pathogens to close off beaches to the public, and ultimately balloons the cost of infrastructure. Back home in West Michigan, we have seen the effects firsthand. I've shared previously in this committee the great comeback story of Muskegon Lake, pictured behind me, which has since been removed from the EPA's Area of Concern list thanks to federal investment. But today I want to highlight the cleanup effort for Plaster Creek Watershed, a 58 square mile acre area that spans agricultural, industrial, suburban, and urban communities. The waterway was renamed after the significant amount of plaster dumped into it. So it's not surprising that by the time the creek enters the Grand River, the largest river system in the state of Michigan, it is one of the most impaired waterways in the state. Most recently, with thanks to federal investment and collaboration with state and local partners, stakeholders have come together to restore over 1,100 linear feet of stream bank and plant nearly 60,000 native plants. My team and I got together and volunteered to help plant some of those earlier this fall. Upwards of 150 trees and install native plant bioswale. These nature-based solutions are working to reduce nitrogen, phosphorus, and suspend solid loads in larger effort to restore the creek. But there is much more work to be done in West Michigan and throughout the country. Congress must make smart investments to preserve communities' precious waters, as well as safeguard families' public health. The Local Water Protection Act will empower local and state governments to keep their foot on the gas, and I encourage my colleagues to support this bill and bring us one step closer to ensuring access to clean water for every American. Thank you, and I yield back.
Does anyone else wish to be heard? Mr. Perry.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This bill authorizes or reauthorizes EPA's non-point source management grants program. And for people that don't know what the non-point source means, point source is like a pipe, but non-point source is water that can be found laying around your property or somebody else's property. And while I appreciate the fact that this bill keeps the funding for this program flat, and I truly do appreciate that because that's just something you don't ever see in Washington, D.C., I actually question the need for this program and the merits of the underlying regulatory regime that requires this bribe to states. And it's exactly what it is a bribe to the states. Effectively, what we are talking about is this regulation, and this regulation is about rain and snowmelt, a concept that actually most folks would think is utterly insane in a free country. We're regulating the rain and the snowmelt that melts on your property. Unfortunately, it's very real and has resulted in significant regulatory burdens being placed upon communities throughout this nation, including significant restrictions on what you can do with the land that you actually think that you own. To make this idea seem less crazy, Congress decided it would bribe states and localities with grants to buy compliance that wouldn't happen otherwise. So now your land is being restricted by the federal government, and your money is being wasted to ensure state or locality enforces this land restriction. We don't want to blame the federal government, so we're going to bribe them, and then we're going to have the state and local do it, and you can be mad at them, even though we're paying for it. Rather than waste this money we don't have on this program, we should instead be fighting to provide folks regulatory relief and remove the boot of the federal government from their neck. And if the states want to, and the localities want to do this, God bless them, because there are probably places that need some kind of record, just like a gentlelady just spoke about. But that's not the federal government's job. That's happening in one place that I don't live at, and my constituents, they don't live there, but yet they get to pay for it. And other places get to pay for ones in, where I live. And all that just is more regulation, more money spent and wasted, and more freedom lost. So that's my feeling on the measure. Mr. Chairman, I yield the balance.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on the bill? Seeing no one, are there any amendments to H.R. 7376? Seeing none, we will now proceed to final passage of the legislation. The question is now on the adoption and favorable reporting of H.R. 7376. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 7376 is agreed to and will be favorably reported to the House. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Our next item for consideration is H.R. 7342, the Made in America Jobs Act of 2026. I'd ask unanimous consent to discharge the Subcommittee on Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management from further consideration of H.R. 7342. Without objection, that is so ordered. I now call up the bill for consideration. Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I recognize Mr. Hurd to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute at the desk.
Please designate.
An amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 7342, offered by Mr. Hurd of Colorado.
Without objection, the amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered as read and shall be considered as a base text for the purpose of further amendment. I now recognize Mr. Hurd for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Graves and Ranking Member Larson, for giving me an opportunity to speak on my legislation, the Made in America Jobs Act, which I have the pleasure of introducing with my colleague from Alabama, Shamari Figures. The Made in America Jobs Act authorizes the Secretary of Commerce to consider projects that help reshore manufacturing jobs in economically distressed communities as eligible for Economic Development Administration, or EDA, grants. The EDA plays an important role in providing grant funds as well as technical assistance for economic development projects in communities suffering from high unemployment, low wages, or other economic hardships. Consistent with EDA's mission, this legislation uplifts economically disadvantaged communities throughout our country and supports critical American manufacturing, all while not creating any new federal programs or increasing spending. This legislation is particularly important for America's rural communities, many of which I have the privilege of representing in western and southern Colorado. Rural communities consistently struggle with higher unemployment rates and fewer opportunities than our urban counterparts. A well-paying job is often the greatest ticket to economic opportunity and social mobility in this country, yet unfortunately, many of our young residents are moving out to make a better living. Unfortunately, sometimes I say in rural America, our greatest export are sometimes our children. They grow up and they leave and they don't come back. These are the areas that stand to benefit from increased access to employment resources that this legislation would provide and the well-paying jobs that it aims to bring back. As Congress continues to explore opportunities to bring jobs back home and to strengthen America's manufacturing sector, this bill does just that by providing critical support to ensure manufacturing jobs flow back from overseas to the communities here in America that need them most. I'm proud to work with Congressman Figures on this important legislation, and I encourage my colleagues to support it today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and with that, I yield back.
Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Support the ANS to H.R. 7342, the Made in America Jobs Act that Representative Hurd and Representative Figures introduced. Last year, Congress reauthorized the U.S. Economic Development Administration for the first time since 2004 as part of the Thomas R. Carper Water Resources Development Act of 2024. The reauthorization made significant revisions to the EDA, providing the agency with tools and resources it needs to support local economic growth and success in the world economy. One change the legislation made was to allow the EDA to consider new criteria when awarding grants that promote long-term investment and growth. And this bill before us today builds on the progress by further expanding grant eligibility to projects that facilitate the relocation of employment sources outside the country to the U.S. and the growth of domestic manufacturing and customer service sectors. So I encourage my colleagues to support the legislation and yield back.
Mr. Figures.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member Larson. This is something that we should all be able to agree on. All of us, or many of us in this committee, represent areas where we have unfortunately seen job loss over the past decades. The factories and plants that were there, the manufacturing facilities that were there when our parents were growing up and coming of age were not there when we got of age. And a lot of those productions had been moved offshore. This gives us an opportunity to bring that back. This is something that we need in the state of Alabama, where we are seeing a resurgence in manufacturing and sectors that are a major economic driver in Alabama. These are sectors like the automotive industry, steel industry, aerospace, shipbuilding. Just in my district alone, I have Hyundai, I have Unokumpo Steel, I have Airbus, we have Austal, all doing great work, all bolstering up the manufacturing reputation of the state in Alabama. We love to say made in Alabama. And this bill helps us make more things in Alabama, but also make more things in the United States of America as a whole. I represent a district where the individual median income is just north of $32,000. I'll say that again. I represent a district where the individual median income is just north of $32,000. We are beyond economically distressed in many parts of my district. What we need are those good-paying career jobs to come back. And manufacturing, the manufacturing industry is certainly something that can provide that, that can change the course and outlook for so many people, not just in my district, but across this country. So I am thrilled to work with Representative Hurd, and thank you for your leadership on this issue and on this bill. And we're looking forward to getting this across the finish line, and I urge my colleagues to support the Made in America Jobs Act of 2026, and with that, I yield back.
Does anyone else wish to be heard? Mr. Perry.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This bill adds onshoring jobs and facilitating the growth of the manufacturing sector to the statutorily outlined purposes of the Economic Development Administration. All of us are for having all these jobs, as much manufacturing, as much technical know-how returned to America. I, like many of you, have watched all this be hollowed out of our country over the course of decades, and these are certainly laudatory goals. But the Economic Development Administration can already do these things. They've been able to do these things for a long time, yet they've just simply failed to successfully do so to date, despite significant amounts of wasted resources provided to the agency. Rather than getting the government further involved in private sector activity, we should be seeking to scale back the footprint of the EDA as we aim to bring it to an end entirely. Jobs are going to go where investment goes, and investment's going to go where it best can be utilized. That's just how that works. Decades of failure in government-funded economic development should not be met with additional funds and responsibilities. Rather, it should be ended so that the government money doesn't crowd out actual private sector funds put at risk to successful ventures that will provide actual economic development. I yield the balance.
Does anyone else wish to be heard? Seeing no one, are there any amendments to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 7342? Hearing none, the question is on the adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 7342. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is adopted. The question is now on adoption and favorably reporting of H.R. 7342 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 7342 as amended is agreed to and ordered favorably reported to the House. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Our next item for consideration is H.R. 7388. I'd ask unanimous consent to discharge the Subcommittee on Public Buildings, Emergency Management, and Economic Development from further consideration of H.R. 7388. Without objection, that is so ordered. I now call up the bill for consideration. Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read and open for amendment at any point, and I'd recognize Mr. Burleson to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute at the desk.
Please designate.
An amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 7388 offered by Mr. Burleson of Missouri.
Without objection, the amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered as read and shall be considered as a base text for further amendment. I now recognize Mr. Burleson for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right now, the federal government is sitting on billions of dollars of outdated and underused and inefficient buildings, all while hardworking Americans are forced to foot the bill for their upkeep, their repairs, and their maintenance. Time and time again, Washington continues to pour taxpayer dollars into crumbling federal buildings that no longer meet modern needs, or in many cases, sit empty. We simply cannot continue this status quo and claim to be fiscally responsible at the same time. If Congress is serious about its stewardship of taxpayer dollars, then we must also be willing to rethink how the federal government manages its real estate. And that's exactly what my bill, the Smart Space Act of 2026, is designed to do. The Smart Space Act requires the General Service Administration to engage in a smarter, more fiscally disciplined approach through leveraging alternative financing solutions like private-public partnerships. These partnerships have been used successfully by state governments and the private sector for years to modernize infrastructure while also keeping costs under control. Utilizing private-public partnerships lowers costs, it reduces risk to taxpayers, and it delivers sound infrastructure fast and more efficiently than traditional federal procurement. The Smart Space Act also promotes accountability by prioritizing buildings that serve core federal missions, ensures underutilized space is consolidated, and sets clear utilization standards to ensure hardworking taxpayers are not footing the bill for buildings that sit half empty. Let me be clear. This bill does not mandate new construction projects or spend a single dollar. Instead, it creates a framework for smarter decision-making, ensuring that Congress and the President retains full oversight and approval authority while empowering real estate experts to make informed recommendations. The Smart Space Act is about doing more with less, respecting taxpayers, and bringing common sense to how the federal government finances its assets. Encouraging the federal government to engage in private-public partnerships is both a practical and a responsible step towards modernizing our federal infrastructure while ensuring fiscal discipline. And I urge my colleagues to support this legislation. I thank the chairman for allowing me to offer it, and I yield back.
I now recognize Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support the ANS to H.R. 7388, the Smart Space Act. This bill provides and supports innovative approaches to address federal real estate portfolio management challenges. Increasingly, building or rehabilitating federal buildings through traditional means has become more difficult and costly. Congress has consistently struggled to provide the full upfront appropriations needed, delaying critical projects and driving up long-term costs. Financing challenges are escalating due to aging, federally owned buildings that are in serious need of repairs and a growing maintenance backlog. The Smart Space Act helps address these challenges by directing the GSA to identify alternative financing solutions for the construction, renovation, or when necessary, disposal of public buildings. The bill requires GSA to submit recommendations and a project list detailing the most appropriate financing approach for each project. This bill also includes terms and conditions that ensure accountability, transparency, and performance in any projects that GSA recommends. A potential financing strategy recognized in this bill is the use of public-private partnerships. A major barrier to using public-private partnerships to their fullest potential has been the Office of Management and Budget Scoring Guidance, which requires that the full cost of a project be scored and appropriated in a single year. When used appropriately and when both partners are held accountable, public-private partnerships can help deliver certain high-cost, technically complex projects more quickly, leverage private sector resources and expertise, and reduce construction and operational risks for the federal government. Federal Real Property Management has been on the Government Accountability Office high-risk list since 2003. So by identifying projects suited for alternative financing methods, this bill will help the federal government reduce costs while meeting its real estate needs. I support this bill and urge my colleagues to do the same, and with that, I yield back.
I recognize myself for 5 minutes. As the GSA and other agencies have been working to implement reforms to reduce costly space, the key challenge has been funding activities that may need to happen before buildings can be sold and agencies relocated to less expensive space. The Smart Space Act of 2026 directs the GSA in consultation with real estate experts to recommend alternative financing solutions and provide a list of projects for those solutions. It just makes sense. This is going to provide the President and Congress with information to see what may be viable in terms of options to address the challenge of upfront capital. With that, I'd urge my colleagues to support the resolution. And Mr. Perry.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I thank the gentleman, Mr. Burleson, for his effort in this space. The Smart Space Act of 2026 directs the General Services Administration to consult with real estate experts on how alternative private financing and public-private partnerships can work together on public building projects to actually reduce the cost to the taxpayer. When Congress passed the Public Buildings Reform, which included the Use It Act in the Water Resources Development Act of 2024, the focus was on directing the federal government to reduce expensive space and better use space the government is retaining. GSA is making progress in offloading underutilized federal buildings that have become huge financial liabilities and refocusing on assets that support the core mission of agencies. However, in some cases, upfront capital may be needed to realize those long-term savings, whether it's work that needs to be done to make a property available for sale or finding less costly space to move a particular agency and their activities. The Smart Space Act of 2026 will result in GSA producing a report to the President, Congress, and the public on how private financing can be leveraged to address some of these costs and propose projects that would result in building sales and serve core missions of federal agencies. This report will help us to evaluate how alternative financing can effectively be used and whether additional authorities are needed. Simply put, the American taxpayers are happy to support a just government that's doing the job that needs to be done, but they don't want to just throw money away for properties that are unutilized or not utilized at all. And the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Burleson, has gone a long way to satisfy and solve that equation. So I want to thank the gentleman for his work on the issue and urge a positive vote for this resolution. I yield the balance.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on the amendment nature of a substitute? Seeing no one, we are now considering the bill for amendments. For what purpose, Ms. Norton? Seek recognition.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Please designate.
An amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 7388, offered by Ms. Norton of the District of Columbia, number 097.
Without objection, the amendment will be considered as read. And Eleanor, you have 5 minutes.
I am concerned that the amendment in the nature of a substitute does not define the term state, which could be interpreted to exclude the District of Columbia. My amendment would fix this by defining state to include D.C. D.C. has the highest concentration of federal buildings of any large city in the nation. D.C. real estate experts should be included in the consultation meetings as the General Service Administration is required to convene to identify alternative financing for the disposal of construction or renovation of federal buildings. I urge the committee to adopt my amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. I recognize myself real quick. I support this amendment. This amendment is going to clarify that the reference to state real estate experts includes those from D.C. This is an important distinction as we work to right-size the federal government. We want to ensure that experts here in D.C. help us address the federal real estate portfolio in the capital region. I'd encourage my colleagues to support the amendment. And with that, I yield back and recognize Mr. Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support the amendment that Congresswoman Norton has offered. The ANS to H.R. 7388, the Smart Space Act, directs the General Services Administration to work with federal and state real estate financing experts to recommend alternative financing solutions for the construction and renovation of federal buildings. This amendment ensures that experts from the District of Columbia will be included in this process, which is important as Washington, D.C. hosts numerous critical federal buildings. I support this amendment and yield back.
Recognize Mr. Burleson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also support the amendment. I want to thank the Representative Norton for finding what may be a moment of ambiguity in the bill and making sure that we're clarifying that the District of Columbia is included. And I want to say thank you for doing that. And I urge the members to support this amendment.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? Does the amendment now refer to, or do we now refer to the District of Columbia as a state? I'm fine with the district being included in the legislation and being included as the District of Columbia, but I am concerned if we're now determining that the District of Columbia is a state. And so I want to see if I can get that clarification.
No, it's real estate experts.
It doesn't.
It does not.
Nope, it doesn't.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on the amendment? Seeing no one, are there any amendments to the amendment? Seeing none, the question is on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. All right. Are there any more amendments to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to 7388? Hearing none, the question is on the adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute to 7388. As amended, all those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is adopted. The question is now on adoption of favorable report of H.R. 7388 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 7388 as amended is agreed to and ordered favorably reported to the House. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Our next item for consideration is House Concurrent Resolution 73. I'd ask unanimous consent to discharge the Subcommittee on Public Buildings, Emergency Management, and Economic Development from further consideration of House Concurrent Resolution 73, and without objection, that is so ordered. I now call up the resolution for consideration. Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. The resolution is now considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I recognize myself real quick for a statement. I want to thank Subcommittee Chairman Perry and Ranking Member Stanton for their leadership on this resolution. House Concurrent Resolution 73 honors our nation's fallen law enforcement officers who died in the line of duty last year by authorizing the National Fraternal Order of Police to sponsor two public events on the Capitol grounds: the annual National Peace Officers Memorial Service and the National Honor Guard and Pipe Band Exhibition. This year, the memorial service will honor nearly 200 fallen officers who made the ultimate sacrifice to keep our communities safe. This includes Officer Henry Franklin and Lieutenant Eddie Mays from my home state of Missouri. As chairman of this committee, I am proud to continue the long tradition of supporting our more than 382,000 members of the Fraternal Order of Police and honoring our fallen law enforcement officers. And with that, I would urge my colleagues to support this resolution, and I now recognize Mr. Larson for his statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support H. Con Res 73. The legislation that Representatives Perry and Stanton introduced. This resolution authorizes the use of the Capitol grounds for events related to the 45th Annual National Peace Officers Memorial Service on May 15th, 2026. The National Fraternal Order of Police will host the event to honor the federal, state, and local law enforcement officers who lost their lives in the line of duty in 2025. In my own home state of Washington State, we will honor two officers who died while serving the public: Sergeant Kenneth Salas and Trooper Tara Marissa Gooding. I thank them and their families, and I want to thank all officers throughout the country for their sacrifices, their devotion to protecting our communities. In addition to the families and friends of the deceased, event organizers expect 25,000 police officers from around the country to be in attendance. Additionally, this resolution authorizes the use of the Capitol grounds for the National Honor Guard and Pipe Band exhibition on May 14th, 2026. I support this bipartisan resolution, urge my colleagues to do the same. With that, yield back.
Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm extremely honored to once again introduce this resolution alongside the Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management Subcommittee Ranking Member Stanton, and I thank him for his assistance and work on this issue. This year marks the 45th Annual National Peace Officers Memorial Event, which honors all of our law enforcement officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice. According to the Fraternal Order of Police, over the past 5 years, unfortunately, more than 2,000 police officers have been shot in the line of duty. In 2025, there were 347 officers shot in the line of duty, 45 of whom were killed. This is absolutely and completely unacceptable. Tragically, 3 of those deaths were my constituents, literally from the county where I reside. On September 17th, the gunman ambushed police officers who were serving an arrest warrant in response to a stalking incident. During the attack, 3 police officers were killed and 2 more were wounded. The officers who died in the line of duty were Detective Sergeant Cody Michael Baker, Detective Isaiah D. Ebenheiser, and Detective Mark Edward Baker. All 3 officers were longtime veterans of the Northern York County Regional Police Department. It is my sincere hope that this memorial service will bring some comfort to the families of the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice, and know that those families and those officers have all of our support. I urge my colleagues to support this resolution, and I yield the balance.
Chairman Mast.
Thank you, Chairman. You know, year after year, law enforcement officers, they put on the uniform and they know that their job carries extraordinary risk. And that extraordinary risk, it often brings about the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. And this resolution it ensures something very important, that we as Congress and as a nation, that we take the time and we take the space to honor those who commit their life every single day in, day out, walk out that door, leave their families, do it to protect each and every one of us. I couldn't be in stronger support of this resolution. National Peace Officers Memorial Service, it represents a moment of unity for us. It's a moment of remembrance. It is the most solemn moments of respect. Allowing it to be held on the Capitol grounds, I think it says to every single officer that your service matters. Your sacrifice is recognized. It is not forgotten. And your country thanks you. A grateful nation thanks you. It's a small, but it is a very meaningful way to show our support for men and women that everybody across the country cries out to when they have a moment of emergency in their life, when they have a crisis. It is our law enforcement officers that they cry out to. And they flip on their lights, they run code, and they respond as fast as they can to that situation that everybody else wants to get away from. That's what they do day in, day out. I ask my colleagues, support this resolution, stand with those who stand every day to protect each and every one of us. They do it today, they're gonna do it tomorrow. We know they're gonna be out there every single day doing it for us, so stand with them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the time. I yield back.
Does anyone else wish to be heard?
Mr. Figurs.
Mr. Figurs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I associate myself with the comments of all of my colleagues here. I've also had the unique opportunity to participate in this event during my previous life as a staffer at the Department of Justice. I not only encourage my colleagues to support the resolution, but I also encourage all of my colleagues who have not had the experience and opportunity to actually go out to the memorial service when this takes place to find some time this year if we're here to do that. It is a very solemn ceremony, a very humbling ceremony, and it is a reminder of the risk that law enforcement officers across this country do take when they take that oath to serve this country in that way. The state of Alabama lost one officer that will be honored this year. It didn't happen in my district. It happened in the Birmingham metro area in Irondale. Lieutenant Mark Meadows will be honored this year. And so I just want to urge all of my colleagues. I know we thank law enforcement officers all of the time, those that go out there and do the job and do it the right way and are protecting and keeping us safe. But if you can, take the time to go out there to that ceremony, and I guarantee you it'll give you a very unique perspective. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Zelt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to thank each and every one of you for bringing this up. It's so important. I've spent 42 years of my life wearing a uniform before coming to the Congress. I couldn't believe it many times that I was even being paid to do that. I love that job so much. And I'm telling you, police officers, it's a calling. It's a life well served. Thank you all for all this support. You know, and I just want to know that I want to let our officers know out there as what Brian Mast said, that you are supported and you are well represented here in the Congress. And with that, sir, I yield back. I urge our folks to vote for this.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on the resolution? Seeing no one, are there any amendments to House Concurrent Resolution 73? Seeing none, we now proceed to final passage of the legislation. The question is now on the adoption of favorable report of House Concurrent Resolution 73. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and House Concurrent Resolution 73 is agreed to and will be favorably reported to the House. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Thanks, everybody, for participating in the markup. I'd ask unanimous consent that each measure ordered reported today be reported as a single amendment in the nature of a substitute, incorporating any amendments adopted, and without objection, that is so ordered. I'd ask unanimous consent that the staff be authorized to make all necessary technical, clarifying, and conforming changes to each of the measures reported, ordered reported today to reflect the actions of the committee, and without objection, that is so ordered. Pursuant to House Rule 22, Clause 1, I'd ask unanimous consent that the chairman or his designee be authorized to offer such motions as may be necessary in the House to go to conference with the Senate on the legislation adopted today or any similar measure. Without objection, that is so ordered. I'd ask unanimous consent that the chairman, after consultation with the ranking member, have authority to strike or revise any provision of any measure ordered reported today that would cause a sequential referral to another committee or that would cause the bill to be subject to a Budget Act or Rule 21 cut-go point of order, and without objection, that is so ordered. Pursuant to House Rule 11, Clause 2L, I'd ask unanimous consent that all members of the committee have at least 2 calendar days in which to file any supplemental, minority, additional, or dissenting views on the legislation adopted today, and without objection, that is so ordered. Pursuant to Rule 6 of the Rules of the Committee on Transportation Infrastructure, I note the presence of a quorum for actions taken on all committee business today, and with that, the Committee on Transportation Infrastructure has completed its business. The committee stands adjourned.